name is Craig Marcus Alexander. I was born to lie, cheat, and steal. I steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, only I do it legally.
Your left hand shows that you had a romance that just ended.
Very close.
World famous sidereal astrologer, Craig Marcus Alexander, the astrologer.
Do you really know your true sun sign?
What about the horoscopes for the public? The books aren't selling. Nothing is happening. You're falling, baby, right down into the muck.
Everything that you see, everything that you do, everything that you are is because of me.
Bullshit! You've got nothing left.
Now, we're going to get down to business. Business. And when you hear the sound of the drums, you're as good as dead.
Hey, this is Sam. Welcome to BNS About Movies. So, I'm always kind of chasing the dragons, so to speak, when it comes to finding strange movies. And no high has eluded me more in my life than 1975's borderline insane vanity project, The Astrologer. Trying to find that movie led to another movie that I may have talked about before that has the same title, The Astrologer, which is Suicide Cult. That film, in which a government agent tries to use biorhythms to find the Antichrist, may be the strangest movie I've ever seen. And then I watched this. You can learn more about Suicide Cult in a past episode. But let's talk about The Astrologer. It's the very definition of a lost film. One that went away 40 years ago and only was discovered again when a 35mm print was amongst 1,000 adult movies that were donated to AGFA, the American Genre Film Archive. I can't even imagine what it was like to be in the first couple of times somebody watched this movie, which starts somewhat normally and then suddenly lurches into highs of psychotronic madness, the likes of which I have never seen before. And I know that sounds like hyperbole. That's a lot of this show's hyperbole. But this is very deserved. I've been caught in the hype train for movies before, but this time, the time, energy, and sheer waiting for this movie paid off. If anything, The Astrologer is even better than I thought it would be. You know how Miami Connection, how great that is? Well, imagine if it's not about how martial arts can save the world, make better friendships, and repair families, but instead, that same auteur madness drove one man to make a movie about a carnival con man who learns that he really does have psychic powers, and when he isn't becoming the president's fortune teller, a diamond smuggler, a movie star, a producer, and a murderer. According to the Matchbox Cine Club, the man behind all this, Craig Denny, grew up rich in Canada, maybe, and was such a devotee to numerology that he refused to even release his birth date. One would assume that Denny was involved in some shady circles like the one in the movie Pi, and needed to make sure that the other occult mathematicians in the world would not have magical power over him if they knew the date that he was born. He was kicked out of every school that he ever attended and fired from every radio station he worked at. Then he went into an astrological charts business with his company Moonhouse. Working for individuals and corporations, Denny would use computers to create detailed astrological charts that pretended their future. By 1975, supposedly he had made $31 million and become one of the youngest studio heads in Hollywood history. The Astrologer seems to have gotten its start as an 8-episode TV miniseries in a time before that even existed, while Denny would also appear in a reality show called Craig Denny's World of Astrology. Shooting started on the former in places as diverse as Tahiti, Africa, and France. Somehow the film also sought to transform Republic Arts Pictures, which used a bald eagle as its mascot, into a phoenix. From 1935 to 1959, the studio mostly released westerns, serials, and B-movies like The Quiet Man and Johnny Guitar. After they ceased making movies, Republic was bought by Victor M. Carter, a turnaround specialist, who transformed Republic into a business that encompassed plastics and appliances in addition to his film library and studio rental business. Within 8 years, he increased the value of the company to 400%, and then he sold what was left to CBS. The former Republic studio lot is now CBS Studio Center. Meanwhile, Republic sold its library films to National Telefilm Associates, which did so well with those movies that at the dawn of cable, it changed its name to Republic Pictures Corporation. From the 90s of the next century, they were part of an ever-growing world of multimedia mergers, becoming part of Spelling Entertainment, which was controlled by Blockbuster, which then became part of Viacom, and then Paramount. Meanwhile, Lionsgate continued to license the name. Today, the company is part of Melange Pictures, LLC, established by Viacom as a holding company for the Republic Library, with the films sold to various media by Olive Films and Kino Lorber. The name remains licensed from Viacom CBS, by the time that I have written this and you have heard it, this certainly could have changed. But I digress again. Anyways, in June of 76, The Astrologer was reported as being the first of 10 films from the newly revitalized Republic Art Pictures. Funds were to come from Moonhouse and 3 French banks, as well as oil tycoon Ernest J. Helm Jr., who was the main money man for the movie that we should really be discussing instead of the intricacies of multimedia mergers. Supposedly, the making of this film was incredibly complex, based on numerology, with even the numbers on cabs, how many people appear in scenes, and even the lengths of cuts, all based on different numerological concepts. Also, there was no script, other than a story that was credited to Dorothy June Pigeon, but instead, horoscopes were scribed each day to determine what would be filmed. Craig Denny plays Craig Marcus Alexander. We first meet as a helicopter flies above a carnival, where we learn he's gone from picking purses to fleecing people via fake psychic shows to getting married to Darian Earl, who was Denny's cousin, and a restaurant owner who at one point was married to Lee Iacocca. Hold still, because I have to tell you, when you learn that Lee Iacocca's cordon bleu educated ex-wife and relative of the film's auteur is in this movie, it's the least surprising thing. You're truly about to learn about a movie that is just packed with madness. Somehow, out of all this, Craig is told about stealing diamonds. He goes to jail for the second time for jewel theft. It seems as if we've missed big moments in time and things have escalated quickly. I really think because, like Your Hunter from the Future, another film that we covered on this podcast, I say we in the royal we, which sounds weird sometimes. Anyhow, I feel like this was supposed to be a much longer miniseries, and we're seeing the edited versions of it. Anyhow, we cut to Kenya, where Craig takes the gems that will bankroll his empire, defeating corrupt cops, quicksand, and cobras to sail to America. This movie is more obsessed with sailing than Christopher Cross, to start his new career becoming the world's most famous astrologer. He does this by allowing a woman to drown in quicksand and selling another woman for a boat, which we watch sailing endlessly as ripped calendar pages fly at us so we know the passage of time, while we listen to the Moody Blues song Tuesday afternoon. Keep in mind the Moody Blues, we'll get to them in a bit. At this point, have we watched 5 movies worth of material? Hold on. When he isn't conducting secret missions for the Navy, Alexander has become a multimedia mogul, making the movie of his life within the movie of the life of the real Denny. To make sure that his money is safe, our psychic protagonist hires his friend Arthur to be in charge of the cash, which is weird because he claims that Arthur has a 10th grade education, but Alexander remarks there's no difference between $10 and $10 million, which is the most false statement that anyone has uttered ever, because there is definitely a mathematical difference between $10 and $10 million. Arthur is really Arthur Chadbourne, a real-life astrologer who still has a website, where he discusses the fact that he was an astrological director as well as the star in the movie The Astrologer. He also worked as an executive producer for the independent television series Meet the Astrologer, which is the series we were talking about earlier. Notably, he does not mention Craig Denny, but he does say he worked in early Star Trek episodes and designed watch faces for Paramount's Dark Shadows. What does that mean? Who needs to have watch faces designed? Meanwhile, being a star leads our hero to rescue Darian, who is now a prostitute. Her room filled with rats, graffiti, and oddly milk and magnesia. He decides to make her the star of all of his movies, having learned nothing from William Randolph Hearst or Citizen Kane. At some points, Florence Marley, yes, the Queen of Blood herself, shows up. Of course, all good things must end. Alexander gets overextended, the love of his life ends up hating him, which is summed up in an astounding montage of dinners that go from romantic to face-splashing horror. You really need to see this scene for yourself. It's set to Procol Harum's Grand Hotel, and literally is a music video. Keep in mind it was made before music videos exist, that follows the exact words of the lyrics. The moment that blows my mind the most in this movie is when our hero is meeting a financial analyst in the middle of his gigantic new home. And he's getting yelled at by the financial analyst about how much he's spending, and he shows off his galactic mirror. He has a window into the galaxy itself that shows the stars as if he were standing next to them. This revelation is brushed off within seconds, while extended sleeping and eating sequences seem to last for hours. Soon after, with his business manager screaming at him, "You're not an astrologer, you're an a-hole," after he murders his wife's lover, Alexander can only stare into the sun, which is a star as well, as he contemplates his life, as this quote from King Lear appears. "This is the excellent foppery of the world, that we are sick with fortune. We make guilty of our disasters, the sun, the moon, and the stars. This movie cost $4 million, which is about $19.5 million in today's money, and nothing in this movie looks cheap. It's got crane shots, helicopter shots, underwater photography, and so much more. And as for the soundtrack, well, it has the Moody Blues and Procol Harum, as we said, as well as Tommy Edwards, Conway Twitty, and Gustav Holst's The Planet Suite, as performed by the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. Beyond the fact that none of these artists were paid for their music, Denny went the extra mile of sending them a bill for being in his movie. Wow. The ad for this movie says he's the gypsy king of the carnival men. To be famous, he lies, cheats, steals, sometimes kills. This played with They Came From Within, at least in a few drive-ins. Showings were sparse, however. There's also a rumored airing on the CBS Elite movie. I've looked into that. I don't believe that's true. That seems to be an urban legend. So what happened to Craig Denny after this movie, and he pretty much disappeared? Well, according to the amazing Matchbox Cineclub article that I've used for reference, Denny continually referred to himself as 31 years old and continued making money under the Republic banner. Four of the films that he were known to be involved in are Attack at Shark's Reef, Death Race from the Sky, Death Star, and the Lucifer Project, which became Barracuda, which also had Denny and Ernest J. Helms Jr.'s names attached to the original promotional materials. He also got married around this time to Donna Sue Wishman, who joined his company as a nutritionist and became the president of the motion picture division, not unlike the character of Darian, who was played by his cousin in the movie, who is also a restaurant manager, which is what Donna Sue Wishman went to school for. Maybe Denny really was psychic, that the turn of events in his future life mirrors the way his character in the movie acts. It's all very strange. The follow-up to The Astrologer was a movie called Oceanic Opera, A Sea Odyssey. It would have starred no actors or actresses, but an all-nature cast. It would have a traveling orchestra play during screenings of the film. It was supposedly nearly done when it fell apart. According to an article in Variety, Denny and his wife had shot sunken Japanese ships, undersea Greek temples, submerged Wells Fargo stagecoaches, hard hat divers, and all form of marine life from Alaska to Australia. The real end of that movie was when Denny and Republic Pictures Industries filed a $50 million lawsuit against Deluxe General Incorporated for alleged unauthorized release of his film negatives from its vaults. This is because Denny said that cinematographer Chuck Keane was given the film he shot. Around this time, Denny supposedly died in Ohio. And guess what? Even that is disputed. According to the website Young Hollywood, Denny told Chadbourne that he was very interested in escaping the FBI and the IRS by faking his own death. Later, when he stopped to visit his old friend, he was told that he was dead, and his sister said, "We're all very upset," in a way that indicated that nobody was really that devastated. Well, there can be more of this? Sure there can. Beyond the fact that Craig Denny convinced people to pay him to be in this movie, mob money was used to potentially film it, and an IMDb poster hints that Denny was his neighbor. It was really cool in many ways I cannot divulge since I was a minor, but a lot of fun to be around. This film has been impossible to see, which is that something of an anomaly in today's always connected, everything is always available way of life. When this movie leaked to YouTube this year, it was down in a few weeks. Going back to that multimedia merger we hinted at before, there's now a black screen that says this video contains content from Paramount Pictures, who has blocked it in your country on copyright grounds. There aren't many movies left that need to be hunted down. This is one that's worth it. I've watched it 3 times in 24 hours, often rewinding things back and forth and pausing them so I could discuss them. My wife walked in halfway through and actually stayed for the whole movie. She kind of liked it as much as me, which never happens. All the time I spent obsessing, waiting, and thinking paid off. I can only imagine that Craig Denny is alive, hilariously happy that the movie he created decades ago that went nowhere somehow has become a quest for me. Immortality is something we all seek as human beings, and who knew that one man's astrological quest for fame would end with a movie that so few could see even today, but nearly everyone who discovers it can't wait to watch it. Whew. Anyway, that IMDb commentator was tracked down by Paste Magazine and interviewed, and let me tell you, that story is just as wild as you would think. Let me quote from that article and Paste. The link will be in the show notes. But the author reached out to the person who left that IMDb comment. The man said that he had a close relationship with Denny, saying that he met him when he was 15, going on 40. He was immediately attracted to the older man, and they became began an occasionally sexual relationship in secret, which Gordon estimates to have begun in 75. Although he was aware of the astrologer and recalls that Denny may have tried to get Gordon's parents to invest in his company at one point, Gordon never saw the film. He was more interested in Denny as a friend and a lover than a filmmaker. Likewise, by his recollection, he thought that Denny passed away as early as 76 or shortly thereafter. This doesn't make sense because, other people have said he's alive way after. Perhaps he misremembered how when he heard about Denny's death. Here was his description of him. Craig was really weird. I mean, really weird. He always seemed nervous. He did not seem as if he was in his right mind, just a weirdo. Even though I have a memory like an elephant, this whole Craig Denny deal seems so vague to me. Would Craig fake his own death? Sure. He was just this weird. It's just so weird that after 43 years, this movie is coming to light again, is what he said. Huh. So, how do you see The Astrologer? That's the major thing. Guess what? It's on the Internet Archive. Most things are. I'll post a link to it here. I'd like to know what you think of this movie. Send me a letter at bnsaboutmovies@gmail.com when and if you've seen it. It's really, I honestly think I'm underselling it, if anything, after talking about it for nearly 15 minutes. Thanks for, well, maybe more, because I'm going to put some other parts and pieces into this. I really wish I could put the Moody Blues songs in here, but if I did, of course, those would trip all sorts of copyright filters. I will say, as for the Moody Blues, I do love the song Nights in White Satin, and if you'd ever like, I will recite the poem at the end of it for you. Anyways, this has been BNS About Movies. You can learn more at bnsaboutmovies.com. How cool that works out. That's where you can find all sorts of movies reviewed. You can donate to this show. You don't have to, please. But if you do, you can pick a movie or a whole week of movies or an entire episode of the podcast that I will do for you. Thanks. Watch more movies. Have an awesome day.